Hello, everyone. We'll give a few more seconds to people to join. We'll start in 30 seconds. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Ruslan Bursting. I'm the Director of Business Development for Agile Sparks in North America. Let me start by introducing a little bit about Agile Sparks. And Yuval will switch to the next. Thanks. So, Agile Sparks is an Agile consulting and training company and offers global solutions with presence in Europe, Israel, and India, and of course, the United States. We're a scaled Agile Gold SPCT partner and a Scrum.org partner, and we're doing this for the last 13 years. During that time, we transform or help transform over 400 companies, starting with small companies, startups, and right to Fortune 500 companies. In terms of our customers, we have a wide selection of customers, and with some of them, we have real case studies with real numbers and real information. I invite all of you to look at them on our website at AgileSparks.com and the link is on the page. Now, obviously, SAFe can unlock results if it's faster time to market, better fit to purpose, or customer satisfaction, and so forth. Now, obviously, it's not working right away with everyone, and it's not a success right away. The key factor for success, and from our case studies, is the willingness of the organization to organize around value. And luckily, this is exactly what this webinar is about. And let me introduce our two presenters. Andrew Sales is a SAFe Fellow and has been supporting organization with their Agile transformation for more than 10 years. He's a member of the Agile framework team at Scaled Agile and is passionate about uncovering better ways working throughout application of Lean, Agile, and DevOps at scale. And Yuval Yeret. Yuval is an SPCT and a PST for Scrum.org. He's also an international recognized Kanban trainer, thought leader, and recipient of the Lean Kanban Brickell Key Award. Yuval is leading some of our enterprise implementations of enterprise level Agile implementation and a steward of our transformation approach, which is the Agile Sparks way. And with that, I'll transfer it to Yuval.
Thank you, Ruslan. Happy to be here and to have this chat with Andy. Andy and I have been, in touch for many years around SAFe, and recently started talking more and more about, this relationship between operational value streams, development value streams, and there's some new exciting content in SAFe 5.1 that Andy is gonna talk about. The way we've structured this webinar today, and we're happy to make it interactive. Feel free to add your questions to the Q&A, and we'll get to them throughout the webinar. We have some time for Q&A at the end, but generally we'll start with why is it so important to organize around value? And indeed, that's one of the key success factors that we've identified in our implementations. Andy is going to talk about new SAFe 5.1 guidance around operational and development value streams. There's some exciting stuff there. He'll talk about success factors for facilitating a value stream and art identification workshop, which is one of the most important steps in designing your SAFe implementation and accelerating and maybe even fixing your SAFe implementation. And then I'll talk about some interesting patterns that we've seen, especially with vendors, and how they're using or looking at operational value streams more from a customer-centric perspective to help them maximize the value that they're creating for their customers. And again, we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So let me jump right in. So one of the key things that we're noticing when we're looking at organizations that are trying to be agile is that the way they're organized right now, the way they're operating right now, you know, approaches, organizational structures that have been created decades ago cannot keep up with what we're trying to do here. And I won't repeat the leading SAFe class here, but generally SAFe is a way to create a dual operating system that is organized around value. We call it the value stream network that lives in parallel with the functional hierarchy that most of your organizations have. The question is, how do we create that value stream network? Why is it so important? So we organize around value because if we are not organized around value, we see problems like handoffs, like people that don't even see the value of what they're building. They're kind of building widgets in the design factory, but they're not understanding the value, the impact. They find it hard to connect to the purpose. And it's both hard to build in quality, as well as people are not that motivated to do quality work when they don't see the impact of what they're doing. So we organize around value, meaning basically we bring all of the people that are involved in building something useful, a product, a solution for customers. We try to bring them together. When we bring them together, there are fewer handoffs. It's easier to deliver value. It's easier to learn. SAFe and Agile are used in environments of uncertainty and complexity. In these environments, we need to be able to close fast feedback loops. Organizing around value also helps us align to the organizational strategy. It also helps us see where are the biggest issues that we have with flow, with wastes, and it helps us optimize at the right places. And the result is what we're expecting to see with business agility, which is faster delivery, higher quality, higher customer satisfaction, and people that are more motivated and engaged to deliver. One of the key tools that we use to identify where is that value, what value should we orient around, is the value stream. The value stream basically looks at the value stream that we create looks at everything that we need to do in order to deliver value to the organization. So the basic piece of organizing around value is saying, okay, if we have people that are needed to define what the problem is, what the solution can be, build the solution, validate it, release it, maintain it, all of these people should be part of that value stream. Now, the question is, where should we orient that value stream? Should that value stream be around a specific system, around a product, around our own solution? Might be very easy to do in some context, but the larger the organization, the more solutions, the more products, the harder it is to actually organize this value. When we get to larger enterprises and organizations, what we tend to see is that we've created sub-organizations, lines of business, development groups that are focused on their own things, and delivering the value that our organization cares about right now, or our customers care about right now, requires cutting across these different groups. But cutting across different groups is a tough move, as probably you've all seen. In a lot of cases, either because people feel like it's too tough to do this, or in too many cases, actually because we don't recognize where are the important interactions, what is the real value that our customers are looking for. We're creating value streams that look like this, where there would be a lot of handoffs and we would not really see the benefit of SAFe. And this is where the importance of finding ways to organize around value comes in. This is what we'll be focused around right now. So as part of the implementation roadmap, we're talking about different points in time in which it's important to understand what value is for us and how to organize around value, whether it's at the beginning before we launch our first Agile release trains, before we launch solution arts, maybe after we've launched an art or two and we're scaling up, we're trying to figure out, okay, where do we go next? Do we need a solution art? Does it make sense to restructure our Agile release trains, revisit the art topology? After we've learned a bit, that's another opportunity to look and exercise the things we learned today. Or maybe it's when we're accelerating as part of the future of our implementation. Maybe it's because we're realizing there are some systemic impediments that the only way to address is to revisit our organization around value, or because the strategy had changed, the reality has changed, our objectives, our goals, our strategic themes at the portfolio level have changed, and we're not suited, we're not organized optimally for what the organization needs right now. Those are all opportunities to revisit how we're structured. So handing off to Andy now to talk about what is the value stream and art identification workshop.
Thanks, Yuval. I'm going to share my screen now, so just let me know when you can see this, please. Good, good, good. And let me just minimize this. So, well, first of all, thank you very much for asking me to join you to discuss this important topic today. As you mentioned, organizing around value is one of the real success factors of SAFe implementations if we can get this right. And what I wanted to run through was the workshop we used to design this new organizational model. And as Yuval mentioned, I want to highlight some of the additions we brought in as part of SAFe 5.1 and how I think these will help you in this particular workshop. So one thing to be really clear about is the difference between operational and development value streams. So SAFe recognizes both types of value stream, and operational value streams, they really describe the steps needed to deliver value to the customer. So these are the steps we require to deliver products or services. In many circumstances, these are going to look like our customer journeys. And you can see an illustration of this slide of an operational value stream that is delivering a loan to a customer. In order to operate successfully and profitably, these operational value streams rely on solutions. These are the yellow boxes. So either solutions that are the systems, the operational systems that they need to do business, or perhaps the solutions that represent the products that they actually sell. And the question that Yuval was kind of alluding to is, who is it that builds these solutions? These are the development value streams. These describe the solution builders that we need to bring together to effectively develop these solutions, increment them, add additional features, and do all of that in the shortest possible time. So although the focus of SAFe is predominantly on these development value streams, when we get into the value stream and art identification workshop, we start first by thinking about our operational value streams. We start thinking about what is value in terms of the value we deliver to our end customers. What are the things we need to do to operate effectively? And that helps us think about how we can organize these solution builders to ensure these operational value streams and the business can be profitable. So many of you may have run the workshop previously. If you haven't, this slide just describes the 5 key steps. I'm going to go through each one of them, but just at a very high level, we start by identifying these operational value streams. We then think about the solutions they require to operate effectively. We then think about the people who develop and support these solutions. And then we start to think about how do we want to group these people into development value streams in a way that allows them to work most effectively. And then, of course, we want to realize, in other words, organize these people into Agile release trains along the flow of value that we've just identified. Now, one thing when we're starting the workshop to be very clear about is many organizations will contain multiple operational value streams. And you can see on the slide here, we have a banking example. And if we just look inside that consumer banking division, you can see there are 3 operational value streams. We provide loans, we provide banking services, we provide cards. And one of the things I want to highlight here, as well as the fact that there are multiple operational value streams inside any enterprise, is the fact that we want to think about the operational value streams from the point of view of the customer. What are the steps needed to deliver that value, regardless of whether those steps cut across functions within inside the enterprise? And that really comes back to what Yuval was talking about. We're going to discover that our organizations aren't necessarily organized to support flow. We're going to work hard to instantiate and discover that flow and then find better ways of organizing around it. Now, that step that I just highlighted to identify operational value streams is really tricky. And when we run the workshop, it's often the hardest step to get alignment around. So one of the things we introduced in SAFe 5.1 is what you can see on the slide here, is 4 types of operational value stream. And the real purpose for introducing these was to help the organization think a little bit more deeply about the types of operational value stream that represent the work they do. So at the top, you can see fulfillment, operational value streams. These are the ones that represent the steps needed to provide a product, a digitally enabled product or a service to respond to a customer request, maybe for an insurance product, a loan, fulfilling an e-commerce order. The manufacturing operational value stream represents the steps needed to turn raw materials into physical products. And then, of course, the software product operational value stream really recognizes that sometimes organizations are building software products, which are then provisioning and providing to their customers. So this could be things like SaaS software, desktop or mobile applications. And then the last one's really interesting. In SAFe 5.1, we recognize the need to actually model supporting operational value streams. So starting to recognize those important internal workflows, hiring and retaining talent, carrying out the enterprise sales cycle, going through the annual budgeting process. And there's a couple of benefits that I think you're going to find with this new guidance. Number one, when you're in the workshop, you can really ask the question, which of these operational value streams represent the way that we work in our enterprise? But in particular, that supporting operational value stream is now going to allow you to have some great discussions around what are the systems we need to build and support in order to enable some of the internal activities that may be delivered to our internal customers rather than the external ones. So what you do in the workshop with that guidance in place is you start to map out your operational value stream. You start from the trigger, someone needs a loan, the value received to the enterprise, the repayments, and then the steps in between. Above the steps, we start to identify the people who actually operate those steps, and that's going to be really useful in the future when we start thinking about some of our key stakeholders and business owners that we in the development value streams need to work with. And then, of course, the next step in the workshop is to think very deeply about what are the solutions the operational value stream relies upon. Now, in this example, which is a fulfillment operational value stream, the solutions really represent the operational systems they need to provide this particular digitally enabled product. If you're an enterprise that is building and selling software, you'd model the actual software product as a solution in its own right, something that you want to organize people around because you need to build it. And if you were modeling a manufacturing operational value stream, the systems would represent some of the key inputs, the bill of materials, the specifications, maybe the embedded software. And then, of course, once we understand more clearly what are the solutions the operational value stream requires to work effectively, we can start to identify our solution builders. So we want to recognize where they're located. That's going to help with organizing later. What are their skill sets? How many of them are there? And we want to connect them to the actual solution that they develop and support. Once we've done that, then we have the critical step. How do we organize these solution builders in such a way so they can effectively deliver the features that these new solutions require to support the operational value stream? And if we think a little bit about what development value streams deliver in terms of value, they predominantly deliver new features. They receive a feature request, they do the work to define, build, and release that feature, and this process goes on indefinitely for the lifetime of the development value stream. So one of the real tricks we do when we think about identifying our development value streams is to think about which of these solutions are more tightly coupled, which of these solutions need to be updated together in order to deliver these new features. So in this example on the slide here, you can see on the left, there's one development value stream that recognizes that all 3 operational systems need to be updated together in order to deliver that new value in terms of features. So we're going to group those together into one development value stream. The core banking system is very separate. We rarely touch it when we're updating those other systems. that can sit within its own development value stream. Now, this is not an easy endeavor to actually identify these development value streams. And one of the other new things we identified and introduced in SAFe 5.1 was some of the patterns that we started to see emerging from people running these workshops in the field. So as you go through the workshop, you'll get an opportunity to look at some of these patterns. I put them on the slide here, and these will help you think about which ways of organizing might be most conducive in your particular circumstance. So in the top left, we've just seen this. This is the example from the loan where we're organizing around the systems that are tightly coupled. In the bottom left, you can see that we, on the right-hand side, have one development value stream dedicated to building the particular software system that we're selling, and another development value stream on the left-hand side, building the customer portal, the websites, the applications that the customers can interact directly with the company. In the top right, we've got a manufacturing operational value stream example, and there's one really interesting pattern that's emerged here. We've got one development value stream actually building the tools and systems that the other development value stream needs to do its work effectively. And this is a pattern that we've seen emerge quite a lot, where one development value stream has as its customer another development value stream, which in turn is supporting the operational value stream. And then finally, in the bottom right, another really common pattern. Here we've got a single development value stream building an ERP system that's supporting multiple operational value streams throughout the enterprise. These patterns aren't meant to be exhaustive, but they're meant to be useful. You can really mix and match them across different operational value stream types. And really they're there to provide some key guidance when you go through this workshop to help you go through this key design step. Once we've done that, and once we've actually identified the development value streams, we want to think a little bit wider. So Yuval talked about the need to achieve business agility. Although we need to do the technical work to actually build the solutions, there'll be many other people involved in the wider solution activities. So we're going to take some time here to think about who from the business do we need to include in these development value stream definitions to really allow us to maintain customer centricity and be effective in the work that we're doing. So as some examples, in the loans example, in the first development value stream on the left, you can see that they need the support of marketing to help generate demand, create promotional campaigns and activities. They need legal team members to make sure the work they're doing applies with the relevant terms and conditions. They need support teams to help maintain and respond to customer requirements. And then, of course, once we've identified these development value streams, we need to think about how do we organize them into Agile release trains. Typically, we're going to see three patterns here. The most common, I would say, is the one that is in the middle on this slide. We have a development value stream of around 100, 125 people. It fits very nicely into a single Agile release train. In circumstances where we have small development value streams, such as shown at the top here, we may choose to put them all on a single Agile release train if they're closely related, maybe a product line. And then, of course, sometimes we have very large solutions that need potentially hundreds or even thousands of solution builders to really develop them. And it's that last example that I just want to finish on. One of the things that we brought into SAFe 5.1 is some of the work that's been done from team topologies, a fantastic body of knowledge. You can read about it in the book from Manuel Perez, Matthew Skelton, and there they talk about different topologies to help you organize your teams. And within SAFe, we've extended that up to the Agile release train level. So if you have these very, very large development value streams, there's now good guidance in the workshop for thinking about how do we decompose those into multiple arts. Stream-aligned arts, obviously they are the best. They can deliver end-to-end value, minimum dependencies with other Agile release trains. And we may choose to segment those across product lines, customer groups, market segments. Alongside that, though, we may have the need to create these complicated subsystem arts. So maybe there's parts of the systems that we're building that require deep, deep expertise. You can see some examples here, maybe some safety critical systems where it wouldn't be right or proper to allocate this work to the stream-aligned arts. We'd only overload the cognitive demands on them. We wouldn't be able to maintain the integrity of these systems. And then, of course, sometimes we want to develop and design platform arts where we know that the services we're building can be reused not only potentially within this large solution, but consumed by other parts of the business as well. So for the first time, really, we've got some really nice guidance, not only about how to organize teams on the art, but also to help you think about how to organize your Agile release trains as part of these larger development value streams. And then finally, of course, going back to our example, I won't go into too much detail here, but you can see in the workshop, you'll run through this example to keep the thread going, and you can see how we've broken down both of these development value streams into Agile release trains, following the patterns I just described. So that's really an overview of the workshop, some of the new guidance we've added in, but as should be fairly evident from some of the things we've talked about, this is a really challenging workshop to deliver successfully. And one of the things we've been working quite hard on recently is bringing together some of the success patterns, some of the guidance, some of the successes from the field, and sharing those back to the community. So I'm going to share some of the success patterns today, but I also want to let you know very briefly that there's a brand new organizing around value page on the SAFe community site. You can go there and you can grab lots of suggested resources to help you generate buy-in for the workshop, think about preparing to run it effectively, facilitating it successfully, and then everything you need to take the action following the workshop, as well as the actual workshop toolkit itself, which has all the slides you need to run this.
Andy?
Yeah, of course you do.
Maybe we'll let you take in a breath of air, and maybe let's ask people if they actually used the workshop. Pause for a second. So you should be seeing a poll now on Zoom of how did you come up with your current art topology? Did you use the existing structure? Did you use the SAFe value stream identification workshop that Andy presented? Or was it any one of these other options here? Let's let people have a couple of more seconds to answer. Okay, let's end the poll and share the results. Any thoughts about the results we see here, Andy?
Interesting, because so it says from the poll, if I'm right, it says 16% of people have used the SAFe value stream identification workshop. And that's probably representative across a larger population as well. A lot of people will get started with SAFe without running the workshop. In some cases, they'll have a program of work that it makes sense to organize arts around. In others, unfortunately, going back to what Yuval said, they'll often organize around existing functions or existing divisions, and then actually come back to the workshop in future when they find perhaps that they're not organized in a way that's really maximizing flow. So what do you think, Yuval? Is that kind of a number that you recognize? Are you seeing a similar outcome to the workshop?
I'm not surprised. What I'm happy to see here is the number of people that looked at their backlogs and plans that to choose a structure when they looked at handoffs and dependencies, which is what we're trying to achieve with the operational value stream, development value stream via the workshop. And I know you'll talk later about validating the structure we come up with using a similar pattern. So this is encouraging to me.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you mentioned it at the beginning, but it's worth calling out again, is that this workshop isn't a once and done thing. We want people to see this workshop as an opportunity to run it as they require it, maybe even to reflect on their existing designs to see how they might be improved. So even if you didn't do it at the beginning, if you think it could be beneficial, it's never too late to come back and run the workshop.
Yeah. I wrote an article a while ago, I can share the link later, which basically talks about some smells or triggers, like looking at your program board and seeing too much red on it, looking at how much coordination you need to do across teams on the Agile release train or between Agile release trains, and that basically giving you the signal that from a systemic thinking perspective, maybe you need to revisit your structure. So
yeah, good, very useful. So that is useful background, because, you know, one thing we hear as we speak to our customers is that organizing around value is their number one concern. In the voice of customer events that we run, that came up again and again as the thing people are perhaps most challenged with. And, you know, to the point that Yuval was making as well, the more guidance we can provide around this, the better. So please do visit this page when you get a chance. I've taken out of that guidance a few things here today that I think will be useful. real success patterns, I suppose, to help you run the workshop effectively and make sure you get good outcomes. And I think one of the things that's worked most effectively for me is to be very clear on the scope of the workshop. So you can see on the slide here that typically within at least larger enterprises, we may have multiple SAFe portfolios. And you can think about SAFe portfolios as roughly aligned to business units or lines of business. So let's say you're running a telco, there might be one SAFe portfolio that supports all our mobile solutions. There could be another supporting cloud IT, for example. Although the workshop can address value streams across multiple SAFe portfolios, it can really help to get the right level of focus, the right attendees, to limit the workshop to a single portfolio at a time. And one of the things I like to do to get this scoping really clear is when you run the workshop, start with a couple of slides setting out both the different business units within the organization, but the one that you're addressing today, the consumer banking division in the example I showed you. And that's going to help you to keep the conversations focused during the workshop itself, which is going to take 1 to 2 days depending on the scale you have and the time frame you decide to run it across. One of the biggest derailers about a successful workshop is getting alignment. And misalignment is not just related to the scope that we just looked at, but it's also around the expectations and the activities that the workshop is going to ask the attendees to partake in. So we're really using this workshop to come up with a new design for a new organizational model. And if you're going through the workshop and this comes as a surprise to anyone, they're going to hold their hands up, they're going to dig their feet in, they're really going to drag the workshop to a halt. So we need to take the time ahead of the workshop to set expectations. There's a designated briefing slide deck that you can use, downloadable in the toolkit. That's going to give you the opportunity really to socialize the intended outcomes, surface some of the concerns ahead of time, and then think about some of the mitigation steps. One of the things that we've been doing very regularly is also to use empathy interviews. So to actually interview the attendees, understand their concerns, really connect with some of the challenges they're facing, and help them understand how the workshop is going to operate effectively rather than impeding the work they're currently doing today. The other thing that I've been using quite a lot is to be very clear on the problem that the workshop is intending to solve. So if you go into the workshop with people claiming that there's nothing wrong with the way we work today, or there's no problem to be solved, you're going to find that very quickly you come against a brick wall. So take some time, describe some of the problems that you're seeing caused by the lack of flow. Even better, start to think about some metrics you could attach to them and use those at the beginning of the workshop to create that alignment. So unquestionably, there is something that we can improve, and then we can work together to actually get to that solution that creates a better end state. You've also got to make sure you have the right attendees. If you don't have the right mix of attendees, you're going to find the workshop itself is not going to be effective. So I like to categorize them into 4 groups. We want people from our Lean Agile Center of Excellence. We want our change agents there, the people supporting the transformation. They're most likely going to be the ones who are facilitating this workshop. But alongside them, we also need executives and leaders. So one of the things we're going to be doing in the workshop is breaking down existing silos. And they're really the only ones who can support the decisions needed to go ahead with that. It's their sponsorship that's going to allow us to be effective in creating this new organizational design. We want business owners and stakeholders who can describe the operational activities. Maybe they can help us think about some of the security and compliance concerns. And of course, we need the technical authorities who can talk to the solutions and the people who are working on them. One question I get a lot is how many people should we have in the workshop? Obviously, it's going to depend on your context, but typically around 20 people is a good number. It really makes it manageable, allows the time for these interactive discussions. And then one thing that's really beneficial if you're thinking about facilitating one of these workshops is do a dry run ahead of time. So we want to have a facilitation team running us through this. Typically one person helping support each of the groups that we're breaking into in the workshop, maybe with one person leading the entire workshop itself. And one thing I like to do in the dry run is not necessarily go through all the steps in the workshop, but since the identification of the operational value streams is so key to the rest of the workshop, I like to get the facilitation team to think about what are some of the things that the attendees might come up with. If they can go into the workshop with some idea in terms of what the outcomes might look like, it's going to put them in a better position to really manage some of the conversations that arise. They can also think about what are some of the challenges that we're going to face. Do we have some attendees that we know are going to raise particular concerns? And if so, how can we mitigate those? And then finally, we've been putting a lot of work in recently around facilitation guidance. There's a great facilitation guide. There's facilitation videos you can watch. Recommend you look at these before you jump into the workshop as well. And then just finally for me, Yuval touched on this. One final success pattern that is key here is to make sure that in the workshop, we're not forcing individuals to come up with a single solution. So in other words, one thing you can do very effectively is let multiple design options emerge. So as you're thinking about your development value streams, if you can't decide on a single design, let the attendees describe 2 or 3 designs. Let them move forward with those in the workshop. And what we can do at the end is think about all the possible options we have for designing our arts and start to validate them against one another. There's a really nice validation exercise in the workshop. You can see a slide of it here. And what we're looking at is across all these possible designs for our Agile release trains, which ones have the least coordination and dependency between them, which ones require us to distribute the work least amongst them. In other words, which ones can deliver on their own, and what's the level of organizational impact? Even if we have some Agile release trains that we like the design, if the organizational impact is too high, maybe we can't stomach that change today. So really think about when you're facilitating these workshops, allowing the time and space for these design options to emerge, and then letting the attendees validate themselves and come to an agreement as to which one they think they should move forward with. So I hope those are useful. Happy to engage in the Q&A later. But I think for now, Yuval, I'm going to hand the screen share back to you. Any questions have come in that would be good to pick up now? I can have a look at those in chat.
There are a couple. Maybe you can hit this one quickly.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen arts receiving epics from different portfolios? I haven't personally. So
one thing, different portfolios, I think is less likely. I haven't seen that as such, but what I have seen is different value streams within a single portfolio.
Oh, definitely.
So we're starting to see more and more now the creation of platform arts that are supporting multiple parts of the business in terms of multiple different value streams within a single portfolio, and they're doing work on behalf of them. I don't know if I've seen the situation where we have a single art supporting multiple lines of business in the organization. I guess it's very likely there could be a situation where you have a platform art that's providing services to multiple parts of the business. That would seem like a perfectly feasible design option.
Yeah, I've seen in one of the fintech companies that we've worked with, we did have separate value streams supporting different lines of business, but it was within the same portfolio. So the platform art that we had there was working on the main IP of the company. It's, product management was basically the company's CTO, and it had to support multiple value streams. Cool. So there's also a question that I'll try to tackle along the way, which was around, let me see it again, around any guidance for value stream mapping in the context of operations and infrastructure. I think it kind of talks about some of the challenges here. So the world of vendors, we'll see if we can get to your question, Elizabeth. So the world of vendors makes everything that Andy talked about a bit more tricky. Why is that? So Andy talked about a couple of different patterns. One was the pattern from the perspective of the customer, the fulfillment value stream, and that's intuitively something that an internal IT organization, internal technology organization would use to model its work around the systems of the organization. There's also the value stream that looks from the perspective of a software product operational value stream. Which one should we use? If we're a vendor, should we use the software product operational value stream because we're selling that product? Looks like we should. And every time we go into an organization, or even when we have a situation where customers students come to an implementing SAFe class and try to exercise mapping their value streams, this has been a bit of a struggle. So let me talk a bit about the challenges or the ways that the software product pattern is limited when you're a vendor that wants to model your development value stream. It works nicely when looking at the big picture and trying to understand everything that you're doing, but the development value stream on the right that develops the solution, whether it's a software solution or a cyber physical solution, it's there, but it doesn't give you too much insight around how to actually organize this group around value. There's much more insight around, what are we doing here? Who's our customer? If we look at other patterns. The downside of using this sort of approach without any clear understanding of the customer or the value that we're serving is that we might find ourselves reverting to our classic orientation. We might find a situation where we're saying, okay, no clear guidance. If we continue with Andy's example of the financial organization serving loans, underwriting loans, we might see that we have our existing towers around channels, loan origination, credit scoring, core banking, and let's assume we have a new thing we're working on. There's actually something along these lines in the market, AI underwriting. Each one of these towers or silos in the organization or centers of excellence would have their own people, and it's very convenient for them to create their own development value streams. Everybody is happy until they start to actually deliver value, until they struggle with all of the handoffs and dependencies that are needed in order to deliver on the organization's objectives. And you might sense some problem when you start to see that if you're using objectives and key results, for example, all of your objectives and key results map to a lot of your development value streams. A better way to organize around value is to have an easier mapping between objectives, strategic themes that you're using in the organization, and who's going to focus, who's going to lead that activity, and how do we create a situation where they can run with it. So an alternative way to do that would be for this vendor. Think of a vendor that is working with banks, okay? They're building an AI-powered loan underwriting product that would complement their existing systems. Let's say that they're providing a core banking system, a credit scoring system, the loan origination system for middle-sized banks that don't have, huge IT organizations, and this is their market. And they want to help these banks accelerate the pace that they're underwriting their loans. There's a lot of demand for loans these days. So what they're doing is they're creating a new group that would work on this product. But this product does not stand alone. Getting to the point that we have AI-powered loan underwriting is not just about this product, it's about the impact that this product has, and therefore integrations and dependencies to all of these other systems. And therefore, the right way to model the operational value stream so that your development value stream is created the right way, in our experience, in most cases for these sort of vendors, they should actually model the operational value stream from their customer's perspective. So if we are serving a bank or banks, we should be thinking about the bank's operational value stream that we're trying to build our products for. That might coexist with that software product operational value stream that we would also have for selling our solutions. We would still need to, maintain Salesforce and licensing for our product and supporting the product. That would be an operational value stream that we would still need to look at. But a lot of our people would be focused more on this sort of operational value stream. So let me ask you a question here. Let's use a quick poll. So if you're look at these questions and answer the poll with your perspective. And let's see in a bit what you're thinking. The first question is, if you're an internal technology organization that is focused on the customer journey of your organization's customers, which operational value stream would you use? So IT, inside the bank or inside a telco, focusing on the customer journey for your customers. For us using our phones, which operational value stream pattern would you use? The second pattern or the second question is, if you're supporting internal systems, which one should you use? What about if you're a vendor trying to apply customer centricity? Which operational value stream should you choose then? I'm going to give a couple of more seconds to answer. So typically, when we're looking from the perspective of an internal technology organization that's focused on the customer journey of our customers, we typically look from a fulfillment operational value stream. The software product is mainly used by external vendors that are thinking about how to sell and operate and market their product. If we're supporting internal systems, it really depends on what systems these are, but the supporting operational value stream is the classic way internal IT looks at things when it's internal customers. And if you're a vendor trying to apply customer centricity, it might be manufacturing. If you're Siemens, for example, and you're building PLM solutions that help people create the electronic bill of material for manufacturing cars or cell phones. It might be, the supporting value stream if you're, an ERP or a Workday solution supporting HR or finance. The software product could be used if you're thinking of if you're more of a software as a service product where you're trying to combine growth hacking and improving the way we market, as well as building the solution. So there are cases where this is relevant as well. The key point here is that there's some guidance on what to use when, and we will share this guidance, but it's not clear-cut. It's a complex problem. You need to think about it, you need to apply some experience, and you might also need to try it out, validate via running some work through the pipes, either in a dry run as part of the value stream identification workshop, or actually for a PI or two, and then reflect. I have another question for you. So sometimes it's not very easy to identify the value stream. So what operational value stream should a vendor that is building high-end car multimedia systems use? For example, Harman, Jensen, Sony, Kenwood, they're building an entertainment system, right, for the car. What operational value stream should they use when thinking about how to organize their development group? Let's see any thoughts that people have here. So I can tell you that I don't know what the right answer is personally. I mean, we've done this with one of our clients, the name is mentioned here, I won't mention who, and we've used something that is, I would say, closest to the fulfillment value stream, but it's not really a fulfillment value stream. It's more a usage or a customer journey value stream. It's not as linear. One of the challenges is sometimes you cannot find a linear operational value stream. I mean, as a driver, yeah, you could say that the entertainment system could fit into my routine when I drive. I start the navigation when I go into the car. I might re-navigate along the way. I might play some music. There's less linearity, but it's the fulfillment one that is actually the one that resonates the most with the situations that I've seen in the field. So to recap what we've talked about here, we've talked about the need to organize value at different points throughout your Agile journey as you're trying to strive for business agility. We've talked about operational value streams and development value streams. Andy talked about the value stream identification workshop and some success patterns for it. And we closed with looking at a couple of different examples, especially from a vendor perspective. Lastly, I want to make sure that regardless of the practices and the specific patterns, we remember that this is about the principles that are driving this. Organizing around value, decentralizing decision-making, assuming variability, preserving options, and applying systems thinking, as well as the other SAFe principles. These are the important pieces here. And as you're going through this journey and trying to apply these patterns, those are the things that you should be thinking about beyond any specific pattern or technique.
Thank you, Yuval. And just before the Q&A session, I do want to invite you to our next webinar, which is going to be SAFe and CMMI adoption in a defense contractor, a case study. And this is going to be on June 29th, 12 p.m. Eastern or 9 a.m. Pacific or 5 p.m. if you're in Europe. It's going to be presented by Daniel Lin, who is the Director of Quality and Performance Excellence at Jacobs. If you're interested in our next classes, you can see the schedule below. We have a variety of classes, and you can visit and register on our website, AgileSparks.com, or reach out directly to us, and we'll be happy to help if you have groups or if you're an individual. And lastly, if you need help with your organization and with your value stream, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to help. You can reach out to us at contact@AgileSparks.com. With that, Yuval, you want to do the Q&A part? Okay.
Yeah, let's go into it. I see that Andy had a chance to answer some of the questions along the way. So Andy, do you want to take a pick of which question do you want to answer live? And then I'll look for one to answer live as well.
Yeah, maybe we can both. So Shannon has put in a question right at the bottom of the Q&A, Yuval.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll answer it in terms of the scaled agile definition of these different operational value stream types. And then if you want to add anything else,
yep,
feel free. So, what we were trying to do, Shannon, is really understand, if we step back and look at all the organizations applying SAFe, are there some common types of operational activities that they're doing? Can we group them in such a way that will allow them to more easily say, this looks like the work we do here? So the first one, the fulfillment operational value stream, is fulfilling some kind of digitally enabled product. And that's the key thing here. It's not really a tangible product that you're being given. There's not a software product, I should say, as such, but it's some kind of service that you're interacting with. So you're taking out a loan, you're going through an e-commerce process, you're taking out a mortgage, whatever it might be. The manufacturing one is a little easier to understand. That simply represents the fact that some organizations take raw materials and create physical products. It could be an autonomous vehicle. It could be equipment for a hospital. And then the software product one is a little different to both of those, because here, of course, we're actually building a product, a software product, and the operational steps represent the fact that we're provisioning, let's say, we're selling that product to the customer. We're going through the sales cycle, we're installing, we're integrating, We're making sure the software is running effectively in their environment, and we're providing some support as well. And then the supporting operational value stream really recognizes all those internal operational activities, things that don't necessarily deliver value to an external customer, but things that are critical for running the business. So the hiring and onboarding operational steps, the steps required to complete an enterprise sales cycle, the steps required, you can see here, to create the annual audit process. So that's how I define them. And that's how they're described in the article, which goes into much more detail. The challenge that Yuval mentioned, and I'll hand it to him now, is that sometimes in particular industries, you could choose to model your circumstance with more than one of these. And that's where some of the nuances come in. Did you want to say something about that, Yuval?
Yeah, I think the challenge, what we've seen is that this is especially challenging to vendors, right? The vendors have the choice of looking at things from the perspective of their relationship with their customer, and that typically points them toward the software product or cyber physical product operational value stream. But there's a lot of promise that we've seen in our work with such vendors to actually take the perspective of their customers and applying customer centricity from their perspective of understanding how their customers collaborate or work with their customers. So in the fulfillment operational value stream, for example, the key point here is if I'm, I don't know, providing software that telcos use to sell you phones, then I need to think about the processes that these telcos use to sell the phones. That's one of the most interesting things for me to look at from a customer centricity perspective. And it also sets me up for looking at all of the systems that are used, all of the products that are used as part of that operational value stream by my clients, whether it's, by the way, my systems that I'm providing or the other systems that this telco is using. I should be thinking about that. I should be thinking about who should I be partnering with, who should I be trying to bring into my development value stream or to consider as suppliers. So let's maybe tackle the operations and infrastructure value stream mapping question. So Elizabeth, I think an interesting way to look at things from an operations group or an infrastructure group is what kind of work that you're doing should actually be considered part of an operational value stream, and what is the kind of work that you're doing that is part of a development value stream, whether you're a development value stream on your own or whether you're actually working with other development value streams. So part of DevOps, for example, is seeing the operations people or the operations capabilities become part of a development value stream for a certain solution. There are other operations activities that are not part of a development value stream, more keeping the lights on and the business as usual. And for these activities, there are some questions around, should we be running these activities using a development value stream with Scrum and Agile and SAFe, or is parts of it actually an operation that is not that complex, it's more important to maintain flow and lean over there, and this is a place to apply operational agility that is also a competency in SAFe that is slightly different. I'm working with some organizations that make this distinction. They are using the development value stream to think and implement changes to how they run their operations. One of the world's biggest CDN companies, for example, were using Agile release trains to help them design their improvements to the networks. They're not using it to operate the CDN on a day-to-day basis. I hope that helps. Any other perspective on this, Andy?
Well, no, I agree. I think, one thing I think about a little bit when we have a question like this is yes, you're right. Some of those folks may be incorporated into the development value streams directly organized around the solutions, but also that one pattern I showed where we had a single development value stream supporting another development value stream, that also talks a little bit to this circumstance. There could be a development value stream providing the infrastructure and operations that in many ways is the input or the foundations that other development value streams build upon. I think it was the manufacturing example that I used where they had, that's it, slide 24. So they had a single development value stream in the top right there, building the tools and the platform that the other development value stream required to work effectively. And you could see that pattern work very well in this circumstance. To Yuval's point, it doesn't mean that everything has to become an agile release train either. So once we've designed and identified the development value streams, you're then free to think about, is it an agile team? Is it an agile release train? Is it a small group of teams? You can design whatever organizational structure is effective for your particular circumstance.
There are a lot of interesting questions. We've answered some of them directly in text. There's more that I would love for us to have some time to answer. I don't know if it makes sense to spend a couple of more minutes or to set up some extra time, another webinar where we tackle some operational value stream and development value stream questions with the audience. What do you think, Ruslan, Andy?
Yeah, I was just going to really quickly say something about this federal one. You're right, we're probably going to run out of time, unfortunately, for all of them. But the federal one, we do talk a bit about suppliers in the workshop. You know that, Yuval. But the other thing I would say, maybe you'll mention something about this, I think this is really where having someone who's used to working in situations where they have multiple suppliers and contractors to help you actually run the workshop is going to be hugely effective. I don't know whether you've got any thoughts there, Yuval, but I think leaning on people like yourselves who have done these things before can help, because it is difficult when you have a lot of suppliers and contractors in the mix as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're seeing every time we deliver this section in the Implementing SAFe class, and I'm sure it's the same for you as well, a lot of people come out of that section with a lot of insights, but also a lot of questions and the realization that this is tough, that this is something that they would rather pair up with somebody, bring in an expert to help them out, somebody that has been in that space before. Specifically for a federal government client, I think that these ideas around look from the perspective of your client are useful here. So when you're doing this, think about the operational value stream that your government client is using. I don't know, if you're creating the system for vaccine passport, let's say. If you're a vendor that the government has contracted to be the prime for the vaccine passport, what should be your operational value stream? Probably it should be an operational value stream that you're familiar with as a resident in the US, and how the life cycle would look like for getting such a passport, using it, where would you use it, all of these sort of interactions. That would be my perspective on this, my short, bite-sized perspective on this.
And thank you, Yuval, and thank you, Andy. Unfortunately, we do want to respect the time box, and I also want to have a fair chance to the people who left us because of the time box to hear the answers. So I think that it makes sense to probably create some sort of extension to this webinar at a later date, or based on the reactions, or a survey that we can send or something like that, to keep on answering the questions, because there's a lot of them and probably quite a few good ones. That said, Yuval, you want to add something?
No, it was a pleasure. Thank you, Andy, for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and participating and asking these great questions. A lot of good ideas for new blogs, I think, over here. Meanwhile, so we'll capture this. and we'll definitely set up an Ask Me Anything about operational value streams and development value stream webinar sometime soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Andy, and thank you again for joining this webinar. And we'll see you in the next webinar.